program in Foreign Army 15.8 of R2 200-1 Army environmental quality, and this goes over environmental programs policies or something like that programs. Main reason I'm doing this here is for the garrison committee leader in the environmental in the EPO policy. The section clarifies environmental policy requirements applicable permanent installation facilities located in foreign countries. Election does not apply to training and off installation deployments and contingency operations of those locations for which no DoD environmental executive agent (EEA) has designated. Army policy: foreign countries not comply with applicable standards, criteria, regulation, preserve, protect, enhance, and environmental quality, human health, and to these standards, criteria, regulations, including country-specific federal final grade standards. DODI issuance 47515, DOD issuance 4715.8, EO 12088, and Executive Order 12114. The federal final graded system standards define environmental standards for Army and permanent installation foreign countries (FGS), taken precedent of requirements regulation unless otherwise specifically noted in the sections. Army's facility in foreign nations of note at final grade standards and will comply with DoD 4715.05G applicable international agreements. Only designated DoD EAA can revise an FGS in cases necessary, comply with more protective criteria of the final grade standards prescribed. The General Garrison Commander must consult the EEA, the environmental executive agent. Waivers to federal final grade standards may be granted only in the DoD designated environmental executive agent, unified command combat commander, in accordance with the country specified final graded standards for DoD designated environmental executive agent. Waiver policy: hazardous waste they cannot be disposed of in accordance with final graded standards will return to the United States, and any other location within disposal criteria can be met. In addition, will comply with standards for disposal. All Army organization activities will comply with provisions applicable state for the force of arrangement of SOFA, legal binding and international agreements, perspective in shipping and storage, and HW, and external environmental performance and assessment systems and EPSA. Assessment will be conducted in overseas installation in accordance with DoD issuance 4715 and country-specific final graded standards. Generally, there will be every 3 years. Environmental remediation of overseas installation is addressed in paragraph 12.4 will be conducted in accordance with DoD issuance 4715.8. Program requirements for overseas activities addressed throughout regulations. Additional and Army ACOM's ASCC DRU's IMCOM installation will comply with provisions DoD IA 4715 of DoD 475.8. Appropriate country-specific implementation guidance per DoD designated EEA Grand Commanders and will consider advisory impacts installation activities on property listed in World Heritage listed in European Natural Conservation site of importance of host nation and equivalent to U.S. National Register historical places. NRHP responsible effort will be to avoid, mitigate, and adversary effects when GC considers adversary impacts and installation activities. Internal protected animal planet ESA responsible effort will be provided to make a minimum adverse effectives on such resources and Army components that assess activity resource and Army National Guard persistent or joint Army operations will comply with environmental annex and specified combat commands. For example, Annex L in the operational plan OPLAN. Army commanders will report overseas in violations through the command channels of DAIM, ED, and courtesies of copying TJLELS. Environmental management system documentation, control, installation, establishment, maintaining information in paper, electronic format to describe the core elements of the management system and their interaction, provide direction on related documentation. Installation will establish maintaining procedure controlling all documentation required. ISO 1401 standards to ensure that they can be located and particularly reviewed, revised, and necessary, approved for adequacy, authorized personnel of the current version of relevant Documentations are available at locations where an operation essential for the effective function of the EMS are performed obsoletely. Documentation promptly and removed, and for all points of issue points of otherwise insured, and against unintended use of obsolete documentation retained in legal knowledge preservation purposes, and suitable identified documentation will be illegible and dated with dates of revision relatively identified and maintained in an orderly manner. Retain a specific period. Procedure responsibility will establish, maintain, and concerning the creation, modification, and variation types and documented. That's what I did. Changed the life of it. For 16, checking and corrective action, environmental performance assessment, environmental management system audits. A garrison commander should maintain inventory compliance and site activities with the potential impacts of environmental, conducting environmental performance assessment in the systems of EPAS. Will include operation activities within the installation boundary, including operational ranges other than training areas of representation. Sample similar activity will evaluate overall environmental program performance and conformance of the ISO 1401. Assessment will include tenant accountants and outgrants and leasing other activities for purview. Purview Army generally. Assessment will not include priority facilities. However, specially circumstance-related facilities, associated land lease ownership, status warrant, and inclusion coordinating installation will report status of prioritized facility. U.S. Army Environmental Command, USAC, EPAS, and Program Manager as soon as possible shall be notified of scheduled EPAS audited determination regarding inclusion and exclusion, and be made external asset concept CONOS external performance assessment schedule based on risk analysis. Consultant headquarters DA appropriated commands outside the continental United States. OCONOS external assessment and conducted every 3 years in accordance with DODI 4715.5. External assessment will be conducted in a term independent assessors. It will not assess associated with the installation of having necessary organizational subject material expertise. Expertise will include the requisite environmental, mental, media regularity expertise, as well as the expertise, functional mission area of the subject to the assessment. 3. External assessment will be conducted by the Headquarters Department of the Army. Headquarters DA approved for the protocol. OCONOS for the proctors will based on country specific final governance standards. FGS environmental performing as external assessment will be provided required for assessment and data and improved application database EDB and EPAS is to assist producing and drafting final environmental performance assessment and report. EPRA draft installation corrective application. The ICAP installation will prepare ICAP and identify correction. Secretary a resource of correction through the chain of command. Assessment of the results. ICAP will ICAP installation corrective action plan will be made available for Environmental Quality Control Committee and draft ICAP. The installation corrective action plan will be forwarded to affected units. Army Command, Army Commands ACOM, Army Service Component Commands ASCC. Directory reporting units is also known as DRUs if you haven't got that for the third time. For the review and internal assessment conducted annual to the minimum installation personnel and apart for the regular management checking for the corrective action unless the external assessment of the conducting calendar year. And in the internal assessment number 2, secondly, the Army installation will provide required internal assessment and data for the Army approved database AD, which is Army approved application database AEDB, EPAS, to assist with producing drafting ICAP, which is also identified correct. Wesley, is an installation corrective action plan. Internal assessment will include review previous assessment drafting and the internal corrective action plan. Review corrective activities completed with assess compliance with new regulatory requirements. Address the specified higher command. Installation will notify respective commands of the internal assessment has been completed. Assessment result ICPAM available. Environmental Quality Control Committee. Anything I would recommend do print the appendix out and the abbreviations so you can follow along a little bit more productively. Installing corrective action plan. ICAP installation of preparing the draft ICAP are accordance with the Army requirements. ICAP is track external internal reported compliance program performance deficiencies. ICAP will remain in draft. Releasability of draft assessment reports supporting papers. Internal work documentation. Drafting documentation must be marked for use as only OUO distribution will be handled accordingly. All requested and all released reports will be referred to appropriate Installation Freedom of Information Act. The FOI, Freedom of Information Act, Officer Environmental Performance Assessment Systems, EPAS, and in progress review. The Director Environmental Programs DEP may convey what's known as an IPR. It is necessary to review a performance of the program and identify and resolve issues. Monitoring, Measuring, Installation Management Command, IMCOM, National Guard Bureau, Army National Guard, Army Commands, Army Service Component Commands, Direct Units, Installation Attendance, and establish and maintain documentation procedures to the monitor and measure on a regular basis characteristics of the operation. Activities that can impact the environmental will include direct recording, information track performance, relevant operational controls, conformation, organization of environmental objects, and targets, monitoring equipment, and will collaborate and maintain records of the process will be retained according to the installation standard operating procedure 1613 environmental information reporting and Army environmental information policy and the Army information as an asset that will be managed by the part of the Army I&E information and technology portfolio management. Environmental information investment will be made in the Chief Information Officer CIO and Deputy Chief of Staff G6 DCS G6 and the Army Knowledge Management AKM and hereby A&E and IIT, main governance and process, incorporated with the Office Assistant Chief of Staff, Installation Management, OACSIM, Business Enterprise Architect, BAA, Strategy Plan, Program Goals, and Environmental Information will facilitate planning, execution, monitoring, reporting of programs, all activities in support of the Army and its mission. Environmental information will be built in standardized formats, incorporated with the Army and Architect and coordinated requirements. Army reporting systems will be coordinated with the OACSIM. Business Transformation Board of Directors, BTOBD. The DP represents Functional Environmental Information Requirements, BTBOD. USACE represents Technical Environmental Information Requirements of BTBOD. Environmental, which stands as the Board of Directors for Transformation. And Business Transformation Board of Directors. USACE represents Technical Information Requirements of the Board. Business Transformation Board of Directors. Environmental reporting systems executed by the ordinance of OACSIM BEA strategy plan. A primary system following the Army primary system is collection reporting Army environmental database and environmental quality ADBEQ. As in the Army environmental database, environmental quality serves as the primary source of information for reporting environmental status. Senior lead Army leadership DoD and Congress with EQ target tracks Army compliance environmental laws to include permits enforcement actions and in relations to determine Army progress towards meeting DoD measurements and merits as MOMS allows Army to populate author required reports. Environmental restoration information ERIS documentation of environmental restoration range program field support and central repository installation chemical geological remedial action data environmental database restoration EDBR database recording collecting and reporting data of the site cleanup of reviewing environmental restoration Army ERA and base closure account BCA Army environmental database compliance related cleanup EDBCC and database recorded for the identifies and documentation is required for the cleanup contamination of the Army site of not eligible to defense environmental restoration DERPA reimbursement program tracking RPTS source used in data reported financial elements of agricultural grazing and reimbursement forestry hunting and fishing and trapping fees and DoD forestry reserve account in the Army with will land and program environmental database environmental performance assessment AEDP AEDP EPAS AEDBS EPAS serves as a primary source of information reporting collection tracking and analyzing the Army environmental compliance conformance data and external and internal audits and installation. Sorry, that popped back up. I'm still recording. The installation status report, National Infrastructure ISR and NI collects reports and readiness. Army installation information collected annual based on the 18 media of the Army Environmental Program and toxic release inventory TRI installation meeting established threshold criteria to submit annual TRI and is required an emergency planning community right to know act of the Executive Order 13423 solid waste annual report web SWL SWR Web system. SWR Web is web-based supported intelligent solid waste management at installation. It also tracking solid waste construction, destruction, debris, waste generation costs, as well as diversion through recycling, reuse, hazardous substance and management system. HSM installation centric and client server software system supporting an integrated management of hazardous materials capable of tracking authorized auditing issues and returning hazardous, as well as disposal of hazardous waste. 14 reporting violation. The installation commander will enforce an action in NENF using official electronic environmental quality reporting, for example, on Army Environmental Database, Environmental Quality, EDB, EQ, reporting mechanism, verification, confirmation of the proper command and channels, for example, ACC, SDRUs, MSC's regional office, ACOMs of the AEC, initial ENFS, most reported in accordance with the current Army Environmental Quality reporting requirements as published, updated headquarters, initial reporting, and entertain environmental quality reporting system within 48 hours or 2 business days, ENFF, involving criminal enforcement, final fine, penalty, fee, or taxes to information-wide, showstopper and major mission restriction, Army-wide, DoD-wide impact, media intention, communities on and off, post impact, or third-party fault. There is not an entity responsible for in fault of the alleged violation. All other ENF reported entire to AEDB EQ within 7 business days of priority commands or formulated with 48 days of the 2 business days reporting notification headquarters DAM IM ED EMP JALSELD Army legal officers through proper command channels. Additionally coordinate with JALSELD Army legal offices and writing with technical legal forces regarding litigation of administration procedure settlement negotiations. 1615 non-conformance corrective and prevention action on all informities identify the headquarters environmental management system EMS implementation accomplishment following accordance with ISO and 1401 establish and maintain procedures defining responsibility authority and handling investigation non-conformance facility these EMS requirements procedures implementation and record any changes to documentation procedure resulting corrective preventive action or any corrective preventive action that eliminates the cause of actual potential non-conformance will appropriate magnitude problems and demonstrator the environmental impact encountered in 1606 environmental records IMCOM NGB and RNG ACOMs ASCC DRUs installation tenants. They will be established and maintained and the procedures identified in maintenance and disposition of records to include the training records of the result of audits. Environmental records will legible, identify, and traceable to the activity, product, and service involved. Will contain a name of official office symbol, point of contact of the record. Environmental will be stored and maintained in a hard copy electronic form in such ways that they will be readily retrievable, protected against the duration of loss. Recording guidelines of environmental records will be maintained at appropriate demonstration conformance to the ICO 1401 recommendation set forth in the AR 25404. All installation of the facilities will provide with the environmental cleanup and documentation electronic permanent repository ASEC. Environmental cleanup documentation should be submitted and are detailed in Army Environmental Cleanup Program permanent documentation repository guidance, which was issued in 29 September 1702. Copies of the guidance are available for the USACEC Cleanup Division. Chapter 17, the Management Review. The Environmental Management System Management Reviews installation will establish written procedures for conducting recurring management reviews of the Environmental Management EMS, at least annual Garrison County in conjunction with the Environmental Quality Committee, EQCC, and equivalent in all properties will conduct a management review of the respective environmental management EMS and to ensure continuing stability and adequate effectiveness. A management process will ensure the necessary information to include collected to allow management to carry out the evaluation management in which documentation will address and policy possible needed for change to policy objectives and other elements of EMS in light of the EMS audit and results in changing circumvention and continual improvements. 17.2 Headquarters Department of Environmental Reviews. Headquarters to conduct periodic programs reviews to adequate oversight program effectiveness of proper allocations to execution. Now I know that it had a lot of appendix references in the paper, so let's just go by this. The DoD directives are available for the DTICM mail WHS or DTIS mill backslash WH directives backslash directives. United States code are available at GPO address gpoaccess.gov /US code executive orders are available at archives.gov federal registry executive orders disposition tables HTML. The code federal regulations are available at the gpoaccess.gov CFR index and HTML. The record publications are as in section 1 is as follows: AR 120 management control, AR 2540 25400-2 Army Record Information System (ARMIS). Also, there you might want to check out MARCS. AR 40-5 Prevention of Medicine, preventive medicine. AR 45 is in. Also check out Army Medical Fitness as in, and 385 I believe, and Army Safety Program. The AR 56 is Chemical Surety. Any type of miracle tournament, and it's got its own program. This 93-94 baseball league went out, and all the triologists decided to find all the cleaning procedures and methods and ways to clean a chemical. AR 70-1 Army Acquisition Policy, AR 75-15 Policy of Explosive Ordnance Disposal. The reading I'm reading this is for the Garrison Charter, and AR 95-11 or 95-1 Flight Regulations, AR 210-20 Real Property Master Planning of Army Installation, AR 210-50 Housing Management, AR 350-19 Army Sustaining Range Program, AR 38-10 Army Safety Program, Acquisition 405 Acquisition of Real Property Interest and therein, AR 405-80 Management Title Granting U.S. Real Property, AR 405 Disposal of Real Estate, AR 415 Military Construction Non-Appropriate Funding Construction Program Development Execution, AR 420-10 Management and Installation Directors of Public Works, AR 420-49 Utility Services, Buildings and Structures, AR 420-70, AR 701-36 Tactical Land-Based Water Resource Management, AR 710 Supply Policy Below National Level, U.S. Army EMS Impact Methodology, Army Training Ranges, Implementation Guidance, and available at www.substantiable army.mil, Army.substantiability, Army.mil. These are EMS aspects and methodology, Army training ranges, U.S. Army EMS Commander Guidance is initial implementation guidance cited in paragraph 1-1, sustainability of Army.mil, U.S. Army EMAS implementator of RESQO's guidance implementation guidance cited in paragraph 1-1, sustainable Army-mil, Army strategy environmental brochure 1090V, ASIA-IE Army Mill, ASTM C60008-96205, standard practice of conducting environmental baseline surveys, ASTM E1527-00, standard practice of environmental site assessment phase, environmental site assessment process, availability of WW Web Store, ANS.org, AMSTM AN1903-9, standard guided environmental site assessment phase 2, environmental site assessment process, PAM 440-11, preventive medicine. I'm going to take a look into that and see if I can't pull that up. DAPAM 415 Army Military Construction Program Development and Execution, DFAS and Manual 387 Final Army Management Secure FY04, availability of ASAFMRW MIL, DoD American Indian Alaska Native Policy Memorandum Policy 20 Act 1990, available DENIX and OSD MIL, DoD Management Guidance of Defensive Environmental Restoration, DERP, and Guidance Documentation Secretary December 2000. Also found it available with www.denix.osd.mil. These have what is known to a link on this PDF file, and I'm giving the rundown. You could download it yourself. I recommend checking on Yahoo or on every spec or in what is known as your DPAM 2530, which is a program which I personally read the index and I found it pretty hard without proper certification. I do believe you have to go through the AKO and go Army first. I had a little two-bunk computer. It wasn't much. DoD 4150-7 and DoD and Pest Management Training certification, DoD 4150.7, DoD Planning Certification, Planning Applicators, DoD 416021, Defense Material Disposition Management, DoD 45,000.R Defense Transportation Regulation. I might look up into that, and I'm looking into 9/11, which is known as Title 23, in pipeline and pipeline hazardous and railroad training, which gives me a good reason to make an FYI look out for a grant out there to DoD 47-15.5 G Overseas Environmental Baseline Guideline Documentations, Documentation 7000.14R, DoD Financial Management Regulation FMRS, DoD 47-15 Environmental Security, DoD 47-1511 Environmental Explosive Safety Management Operation Ranges of the United States, CF paragraphs 8.2 and 12.14, and DoD 47-15 Environmental Explosive Safety Management Operational Ranges outside of the United States, DoD 5000.1 Defensive Acquisition Systems. And this is what you have to ask for, is what is in your DAU. Today, it's if you had an issuance, that goes as long as with your Navy Flag 306, which is your testing for the crew licensing of what is known as my brakeman and my equipment operators, and it has a 99 question test, handwritten, and the final part about it is, would you like to study on? And DoD issuance is a pest management program. DoD I invest in 4715 Environmental Conservation Program. DoD information in 4715 Pollution Prevention Unit 1996. DoD instruments 4715 Management Environmental Compliance with Overseas Installation cited paragraph 43, 52, 15, 18, 16, and 1. DoD issuance 41715-7 Environmental Restoration Program. Environmental recommendation for DoD activities overseas cited in 12-2-1214, 15-8, EO 1988 floodplain management 42 FR 26951 cited in paragraph 4-2 EO 19 executive orders of protection of lands, executive orders superfunded implementations of 52 FR 29223 EO Indian sacred sites, EO executive order in the invasive species, EO executive order consultant coordination Indian tribal governments, EO responsible federal agency of protect migrated birds, EO Preserve America, EO Strengthen Federal Emergency Energy Transportation Management, ER formerly used as Defense Sites Program Policy, Environmental Field Manual, Environmental Consideration, Military Operation, ISO 14001, and also known as the ANSI ISO 14001-2004 Environmental System Requirement Specification and Guidance Use. You can available at the web store of the ANIS.org. Memorandum DSUD INE in October 2000 is implementation cycles of Act Improvement and Act upon the guidance in Public Law 108-136 National Defense Authorization Act of FY04. Public Law 10958 and Energy Policy Act of 2005, TB Med 575, Swimming Pools, Bathing Facilities, TB 57, Occupational Health and Sanitary Control Surveillance, Water Supplies and Field Installation, Occupational Environmental Health, Sanitary Control Services, Surveillances and Field Water Supplies, TB 55, 1902 of 6 and 14, Control Abate and Pollution and by Army Watercraft, TM55, TM566-2, and Swimming Pool Operation Maintenance, TM58313, Water Supply Source Generated, General Consideration, USA.Army.mil, Water Supply Water Treatment Site, Paragraph 42, www.usa.army.mil, TM 5813-4 Water Supply Water West Storage and www.usas.army.mil Water Supply Water Distribution available for www.usas.army.mil and throw it away. TM 5813-7 Water Supply Special Subjects Volume 7 available www.usas.army.mil Water Supply Western Water Desolation available to usarmy.mil USACE.Army.mil Water Supply Pumping Station USACE.Army.mil the U.S. Unified Control Criteria Operational Water Supply System availability WM bdg or .org GCB. And if you're interested, there's what they call the Pritchard and Panero yards, which is basically across their horizontal tanking underground tanking, which ships up the miracle solution and it's mercury, silver peroxide, and small beads, which is you know it's my family's gold, and a little bit of mothball melted into it. Guided, provided safe drinking water, intermediate installation available to CPMPA, WWAPGEA Army.mil. 5 United States Code Freedom of Information Act is amended. 7 United States Code 136, a 10th sequence federal inspected fungicide reintentional Act FFRA. 10 U.S. Standard Code 265, sale of certain interested land log. 10 United States Code, less than non-excessive property in military departments. I'm not going to read the code, but military reservation facilities, hunting, fishing, and trapping, agreements for limit, enroachment, and constrainment of military training and testing operations, utility systems, conveyance authority, surplus report, or property, natural resource conservation, environmental restoration, toxic substance act control act, asbestos hazard emergency act, marine mammal protection act, and Endangered Species Act of 1973, ESA, Antiques Acts of 1906, Permits to Examine, Excavation, and Gathering Objects of Regulation, American Antiques and Archaeological Historical Preservation of 1974, EHPA, as amended, National Historic Prevention Act of 1966 as amended, Forest Reserve Conservation Shortage Relief Act of 1990, Fish Wildlife Coordination Strike Act Program and Conservation Rehabilitation Natural Resource Military Installation and Migration Game Berms Permanent Fees State law requirements applicable to other national forest lands, games, wild birds and preservations, Migratory Bird Treaty Act, Magasin Fishery Conversion Act, Management Act, Lacey Act, Adequate Nuisance Prevention Control, Native American Grave Protection, Reparation, Occupation Safety, Health Standards, Hazardous Waste Operation, Emergency Response, Occupational Safety, Health Standards, Asbestos, Health Standards, Lead, Hazardous Communications, Safety Health Regulations, Construction Safety Health Regulations, Lead, Office Secretary of Defense and National Resource Management Program, Environmental Analysis, Army Actions, Clean Water Act, Marine Protection Research Sanctuary Act of 1972, as the MPRSA, as amended by Ocean Dumping, Oil Pollution Act of 1990, Safe Drinking Water Act, as amended, American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978, and National Environmental Policy Act of 1969, Resource Conservation Act, RCA amended, Enemies Control Act of 1972, Hazardous Solid Waste Amendments of 1984, subtitled the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, 42 U.S. Standard Code Federal Facility Compliance Act of 1992, Cleaning Air Act is amended, CAA, Comprehensive Environmental Response Compensation and Liability Act of 1980 is amended by circular and cited paragraph, Environmental Planning and Community Right to Know Act. I did cover that one. That goes in my Garrison Committee. 42 U.S. 42 U.S. Standard Code Pollution Prevention Act of 1990. Crucian Federal-Owned Administration Archaeological Collection, Protection of Historical Properties, National Mention of Hazardous Air Pollution, Oil Pollution Prevention, Hazardous Waste, Identification Listing, Hazardous Waste, EPA, Military Munitions, Technical Corrective Requirements, Owners, Operators, Undergoing Storage Tanks, and I'm going to give a printout what this is, this references, and approval state underground storage tank programs like Pritchard and Panero yards, National Oil Hazardous Substances Pollution Contingency Plan, the real organized tanks. There's about 300,000 that carry different liquids and other than fuels and oils and peroxides and ammonias. Designation of reportable quantities, notification, general treatment, regulation, existence, new source pollution, lead-based paint, poisoning, prevention, central resident structures, practice, television procedures, soundtracks on certain areas under jurisdiction of the Department of Interior, and patent regulations, table of contents, protection of archaeological resource, National American Graves, the Protection, Reparation, National Army, American Grave Protection, Reparation Regulations, International Archaeological Excavation, Federal Hazardous Materials, Transportation Law, Take Possession, Transportation, Sale, Purchase, Barter, Expiration, Importation, Wildlife, cited in paragraph 413, U.S. Wildlife Services, U.S. FWS, General Permit Procedures, Migratory Bird Permits, Endangered Species Act of 1973, amended, DoD Office, Secretary of Defense Environmental Restoration Program. Section 2, related publications, and it goes on. If you're looking into the what's the Nuclear Advisory Council, what is known as Title 36 of the Army Radiation Safety Program. Now, I may leave these radiation hazardous waste to a certain group. My last two little buckets at the lecture showman shop, which is really the hard part about it. Budgeting, funding, reimbursement based operations, same commander continent. I'm gonna medical support, nuclear chemical accident incidences, nuclear surety, Army reactor program, water management control, ethanol, alcohol, hazardous and biological substances, Army resource test and evaluation, malfunction, ammunition, inter-service responsibility, explosive ordnance, Army leader, Army public affairs, safety system engineering, management, accident reporting records, U.S. Army explosive safety programs, fire emergency services, hazard material information resource, requisition receipt issues, and Army National Material Maintenance Policy, DM Palm 48-8, occupational health, and evaluation control, occupational exposure, nerve agents, DPAM hearing conservation program, Environmental Protection Agency, DASA, headquarters memorandum, environmental management action memorandum, sustainable range operations, and the list goes on and on and on. I can't cover it all, so I'm just the straight one off the Garrison Committee. As you see, it's a very long list. I'm going to sit. Let's go to section 3, prescribed forms. The section contains no forms, reference forms, the DA form 112R3, management control evaluation certificate and statement. The DA forms are available on Army's publishing website, apd.army.mil. DD forms available, osd.ww.dtcs.mil.wsh, /WHS, /directives, /info mgt, /forms program-hem. So if you really take all the reading, you don't really have to read it all, but there's a couple, is prescribed and referenced. Appendix B, installation management control evaluation sheet, checklist. The functional covered in the checklist, environmental management. B2, the purpose of the checklist is the installation manager, staff, evaluation, key management control listed and is not intended to cover all controllers. The garrison commander designated representative will perform the checklist. B13, instruction award must be based on actual tests of key and management control. For example, documentation, analysis, observation, sample simulation, other answer well deficiency must be explained, corrected, and indicated in support and documentation. Management control evaluated at least every 5 years. Certification evaluation has been conducted, must be accomplished by the DA Form 123, a management control evaluation certification. The test questions are program performance is due installation environmental quality control committee, formally constitute chair, garrison commander, which provides to perform enhancement, address, and resolve environmental and multi-jurisdictional program to enhance, identify, proactive control of environmental risk, installation of pollution prevention policy, protection in place of operation, reduce the policy and the reduction and reuse, recycling, energy, water use of does the installation request in the places required in environmental plans. All personnel, including appointed environmental officers, trained, equipped sufficiently to exchange duties to the environmental safe, compliant, and responded in the case of environmental agencies, emergency identified, and internal audit, compliance, if enforcement and actions investigated, determined systematic causes, primary corrected PD, LD, DASA, ESOH, Directive 13, July 2001, Executive Order 13423, DOS, and have been installation, internal assessment, I2A, APPD, LD, DASA ESOH Directive 13 July 204 Executive Order 13423 updated annually indicated documentation installation environmental management in the system EMS PDLG DASA ESOH Directive 13 2004 EOS EO 13 423 EAR 110 or 11 AR 11.2 environmental conditions. All solid waste is systematically characterized, determine if the hazard is basis of determination, general knowledge and analytical documentation, ways disposed improperly, or units, project activities, work sites coordination, environmental officers, inadequate National Environmental Policy Act documentation routinely prepared in consideration integral planning of note. Overseas installation should follow the environmental guidance of the ERG, since the NAP does not apply to overseas. Environmental performance assessment of the EPAS evaluation corrective actions, installation corrective action plan, ICAP completed in a timely manner. Deficiency identified, ICAP records forwarded responsive proponent, inclusion in appropriate program budgeting documentation, mission impact, and are the management plant practices in place in order to improve C rating and mission critical environmental areas. Top management is G. Garrison Commander in environmental quality control. Standard periodically reviewed, and 2 AP is top management review of the findings of the installation corrective action plan. Ensure the adequate efforts of are being made to closer compliance. Are required reports for complete and accurate is required to submitted to regulators timely, accurate manner, and report is submitted in high headquarters term accurate. Does the installation high headquarters review and improve environmental data report at headquarters physical inspection conducted regular basis? Does the environmental protection are they interact and ensure corrective action environmental compliance deficiency recorded the ICAP? And it goes on to B5 suppressions. The checklist must be published. Checklist is published in AR 2020 AR 200-1 dated 21 February 1997. Comments as how may better tool evaluation management control submit control comments to headquarters DA Director Environmental Programs DEP 600 Army Pentagon Washington DC 203-0106. And Appendix C is a glossary of abbreviations. Right now I'm going to give you a print. Let's not do the glossary. I gave you the shutdown or the regulation. I'm going to start out with 84 as our installation management control evaluation checklist, and our basic, 84 to 64. That's only 20 pages. I'm going to go on paper, and that's the game.